What's up guys, we're going to be taking a look at this lab, inconsistent handling of exceptional input. A couple of things to note here before we get started. This is one of the labs with a mock email client, and if we access the email client, you can see that we have an email address that is unique to our specific lab. Note also that we don't really need the username here, we simply need the domain and subdomain, and we get a small note here displaying all emails to the domain and all subdomains. So really we just need the @exploit part, and we can make this into any subdomain we want to. The lab title contains the term exceptional input. In this case, exceptional just means overly long. And the way that we're going to make progress in this lab is by registering with an overly long email address. So let's start with a regular username, email address. We're going to deliberately register with something extremely long. It ends with the domain of our mock email, but if you take a look at the beginning, we just have a whole bunch of A characters. Password, we'll just use pass for now, choose register. Please check your emails for account registration link. Okay, let's head to the mock email client. Now notice we have the full email that we've registered here. We can tell this because we have the entirety of the domain of the email address. This is part of the reason why the lab has inconsistent in the title, because here we can see that everything's okay with the email address, but that's not going to be consistent in every part of the app. Let's follow the link to complete our registration, at which point we should be able to log in. So we're just going to use the credentials we've created just now. And we're at the account section. And when we take a look at the email address listed in the account section, we can see that it's been truncated. So inconsistent handling. Now, what I suspect has happened is that when the registration confirmation email was sent out, the email was used directly as a string, and then afterwards it was saved into a database, but the database is truncating varchar entries to 255 characters, because this string is exactly 255 characters long. Now, it just so happens that old databases used to have a limit on varchar entries, with 255 characters being the max. In any modern database, you can really have varchar entries as long as you like. For example, PostgreSQL, you can have a varchar entry up to a gigabyte. And that's only because all entries are constrained to a maximum size of 1 gigabyte. It's got nothing to do with varchar itself. But there's a bit of history why this is truncated to exactly 255 characters. It used to be the maximum length for a varchar entry in various flavors of SQL database. Now, similar to some of the other labs that we've seen, this is one of those labs where if a user has the don't wanna cry, so the email is something at don'twannacry.com, it's automatically assumed that they are an admin user. And we spoke in previous labs about why that's probably not the most secure way of handling authentication. But if we can have or generate an email address that ends in at don'twannacry.com, we are automatically going to have access to the admin panel. Now, of course, we can't do that typically because we don't have access to the @don'twannacry domain for receiving emails. Therefore, we can't complete the registration. But what we can do is craft an email address that gets truncated at just the right point so that in the account section, this reads as @don'twannacry.com, but we're still able to use our full email domain in registration in order to receive the registration confirmation link. Now, I found Notepad++ handy for this. The second email address you see here is the string that we've just registered with. The first email string is a specially crafted string that ends exactly at character 255. It has the same ending to the domain, .exploit, followed by our ID, .exploitserver.net. So that's all the same, but we've prepended @don'twannacry.com. Now, you might think that this changes the domain, but it actually just creates a subdomain of exploit.exploitserver.net. And remember, we read that we're going to receive emails that are sent to any subdomain of exploit.exploitserver.net. So this is still going to work. And the reason why I found Notepad++ helpful is if I place the cursor just before M, it will tell us what the position of M is in the string. And at the bottom of Notepad++, you can see this is position 255. In other words, the truncation is going to happen just after M, but we're still going to be able to complete the email registration because we have a valid domain here for our mock email client. So let's copy this. We are going to register again. We will have to use a slightly different email this time. is our crafted email address with @don'twannacry.com as part of the subdomain. And we'll just use the password pass, register. So first of all, we should still receive a link in our email, and that's because the domain is the same, even though the subdomain is technically changed. So we can see @don'twannacry.com. So this is our registration link. Let's follow that. Let's now log in. Let's head to my account section and notice a truncation has occurred immediately after the M. So I suspect this is what's actually saved in the database at this stage. So now if we head to the admin panel, we're able to fully access the admin panel and we have the ability to delete users. The objective of the lab is to delete the user Carlos. I don't know why it's Carlos that always gets it, but there we go. Delete Carlos, user deleted successfully. Congratulations, you solved the lab. Now, I find it unlikely that this specific scenario is going to arise where there's a specific truncation in a database somewhere, and there's also a way to bypass the admin panel based on the domain associated with your account. Having said that, there are still some useful lessons to take away from this lab. First of all, make sure your database entries match up to the type of data that you're storing. Or, as is commonly the case, if you have a limit, for example, on how long you want a user's username to be. For example, we decide, actually, we don't want anyone with a username more than 50 characters, for example. Well, we just don't let them register if their username is longer than 50 characters. Whereas in this case, you can see registration is possible, even if we're providing a username that's longer than the database is going to allow to be stored. That doesn't make sense. So that's lesson number 1. Lesson 2, which is really the key point of the lab, is make sure our handling of input is consistent. Because it's this lack of consistency where one control allows the information to pass it, but then the second control hands it differently, that actually allows for various types of injection attacks. Same principles used for many domains in cybersecurity, in fact. For example, bypassing intrusion detection systems uses a very similar principle where the intrusion detection system uses different criteria than the host when handling the input, allowing us to communicate with the host in a very specific way that doesn't flag anything in the IDS. So this is a very widespread principle in cybersecurity in general. We want consistent handling of the input, no matter the specific domain we're referring to. All right, that's pretty much it for this lab. Thanks for checking out the content, and I'll catch you guys in the next lab.